Good day, creative spirit. We'll start our session today with an oldie but a goodie. Number 357 in Voices United. Tell me the stories of Jesus.
Tell me the stories of Jesus. I love to hear things I would ask him to tell me if he were here. Scenes by the wayside, tales of the sea, stories of Jesus. Tell them to me. First let me hear how the children stood round his knee, and I shall fancy his blessing resting on me. Words full of kindness, deeds full of grace, all in the love light of Jesus' face. Tell me in accents of wonder how rolled the sea, tossing the boat in a tempest on Galilee, and how the Master, ready and kind, chided the billows and hushed the wind. Into the city I'd follow the children's band, waving a branch of the palm tree high in my hand. One of his heralds, yes, I would sing loudest hosannas. Jesus is King. Show me the scene in the garden of bitter pain, and of the cross where my Savior for me was slain. Sad ones or bright ones, so that they be stories of Jesus. Tell them to me.
All right, we're going to go into the reading now. I want to do a little singing after the reading. But we've just done an oldie but a goodie, and it's talking about telling new stories. So if you happen to be following along in the We Make the Road by Walking, we're in chapter 11 this week, and this is called Tell New Stories. In our ancient history, before the time of the Bible, people believed there were many warring gods, all of whom were violent and capricious. In much of the Bible, we advanced to a vision of a single God who uses violence against them in the service of justice for us. Eventually, through the biblical library, we find a beautiful new vision of God being revealed. God desires justice for all, not just for us. God is leading both us and them out of injustice and violence into a new way of reconciliation and peace. God loves everyone, everywhere, no exceptions. Violence, like slavery and racism, was normative in our past, and it is still all too common in the present. How will we tell the stories of our past in ways that make our future less violent? We must not defend those stories or give them the final word. Nor can we cover them up, hiding them like a loaded gun in a drawer that can be found and used to harm. Instead, we must expose these violent stories to the light of day. And then we must tell new stories beside them. Stories so beautiful and good that they will turn us toward a better vision of kindness, reconciliation, and peace for our future and for our children's future. The stories of Jesus' life and teaching, wisely told, can help us imagine and create a more peaceful future. They help us see the glory of God shining in the face of a kind, forgiving, gentle, and non-violent man, and in the smiles and tears, words and deeds of those who radiate his love. Let us pray. God, may my smiles and tears, my words and deeds radiate your love to others, and may we tell stories that turn us toward a better future for ourselves and our children. Amen. Now, if you happen to have more voices, that is the hymn book that I want to do this next bit as we stay in a state of reflection, and it's number 7 in More Voices. One way I love to find the beauty in any story, in any day or any time, is mandalas. And this is what we're going to create today, our mandalas. They are dotting mandalas. So here are the things that you will need for today's mandala exercise. And I shouldn't say exercise, should I? No. For today's time of reflection and prayer and contemplation. There we go. You will need some cardstock. Black cardstock is a good way to start. If you don't have black, perhaps grays, any kind of grays, or even if white cardstock. Now, ideally, if you have the square canvases or the canvas board like this. And these have just been painted black. They're the ones that have the huge magnet on the back. Have just been painted black. These are the 4-inch square, so they come like this. Or the small 3-inch. These are getting tiny, so bear in mind that this is going to be some fine work. So if you've got the canvas board, that's ideal. But we're going to be using cardstock today. Or if you've got cardstock, the cards, the blank cardstock cards that have the pre-fold in them, you could do the mandala directly on it and then send it off to someone, which is a wonderful idea. So that's always an option too. Some of the other things you'll need, oh, this is a 6-inch square, by the way, is what we're going to be working with. Some of the other things that you will need are some scrap paper. All right, just anything out of your, before it goes into the shredder or your recycle bin, some scrap paper. Then you are also going to need possibly a pencil for drawing lines, a compass, which I didn't bring with me, a compass for creating the circles, not necessary, but perhaps helpful. Chalk that helps to create the lines instead of a pencil, because the erasing of the pencil lines, I admit, once you get the dots on it, right, far harder to then try and erase those lines, or you just live with them. Some of these still have the lines on it, and that's just fine. Or you do it in chalk, and then that way you don't have to worry, right? You can rub those lines out. A ruler, again, to help with those lines. Now, the dotting tools. You will need, aside from, before I get to the tools, acrylic paint. The wells, this is great for our dotting. You don't need a lot of paint out, okay? So less is more in this case. So just a couple little squirts. And in a lot of cases, what a lot of individuals do, so if you've got the smaller bottles and you just take the cap off, and you can use what's inside the cap to then actually get your dotting tools ready for paint. Because like I said, you don't need a lot. All right, so it's just something to think. Don't fill the wells full of paint. All right. Now, there are lots of places where you can buy actual dotting tools. But here are the homemade versions or the easily accessible versions. All right. So one, I have a paper clip, and this is just a paper clip that I have unfolded that first open round, just opened it up straight. So you've got something then to hang on to, and then the point on the end, right? Okay, so paper clip. A pencil. Now, oddly enough, this is a brand new pencil, and it doesn't matter whether it's an HB, an HB2, an H2, whatever. This is just your average run-of-the-mill cheap pencil. But the key to this pencil is that it has a sharp point to it, and that it has a brand new eraser that's nice and flat and round. Perfect. Okay. The next is a cork with a pin, just a round-headed pin. So you know when you go oftentimes to the dollar store and you've got the pins that have the little balls, the colored balls on the end. That's what we're talking about here, all right? And I've just pushed it into this cork, giving it about, a finger's depth there. This is ideal. Now, you could also use the really big end of the cork as well, just as a note, but we're talking about dotting with this end. And then I have four different sizes of dowel. Now, it doesn't have to be dowel, that's what we happen to have. And they're just gradated sizes. So there's what I would call my larger dowel, my medium, my small, and my extra small. How's that for being explicit as far as sizes? Yes, they do actually have measurements. I have no idea. It doesn't matter. That's the point. As long as you have gradated sizes, right? You don't want your tools all to be the same size. So as long as you have a variety of sizes, then you're good to go. The next thing, and of course, some damp cloths. because this will be very important, or paper towel, but the damp cloths really work well. You will need to be wiping your tools off all the time throughout this process, okay? You can, I mean, I've got a jar here if I need water just because of the setup, but that won't be necessary. It's the damp cloths that will be very helpful in this process. And the scrap paper, what I want you to be able to do with the scrap paper is list your tools on the paper, right? So take your piece of scrap paper, write down your list of tools, like I did here, and then I want you to dot with each one of them on here so you have a reference. It's really hard to tell sometimes looking at the tools as to the size of dot that it's actually going to create. So this is a great little reference piece, okay? And not only should you do like the single dots, but the things that have the round edges. So the paper clip, it can be used as what we call walking dots. Now I realize that from where you are, or from where the camera is, and from where this is, you're not going to be able to see this. I'm going to zoom in. Just give me a moment. But the walking dots, so when you dot, 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 one right after another, do those examples as well. So with the paper clip, the bald pin in your cork, the point on your pencil, those are the things that you can walk your dots with really well. The dowel, not so much. Those are going to be just single dots. All right, and we'll explain that in a moment. Okay, so I've got some paint. White, here's some, just the colors are up to you, but you know, the less is more sort of thing. But I will just tell you that one of the things that some folks like to do is have sort of a black and a white and then 3 colors. Then there is also the theory that says black and white, 3 colors, but make those 3 colors actually color families. So 2 greens, there's your 1, 2 orange, in this case I've got 2 greens, 2 oranges, sort of, it's the metallic bronze and a sort of a golden mustardy yellow or a light orange, and then 2 pinks or 2 reds. Okay, so that, and the reason being is that you can do what they call top dotting or double dotting. So you've got either a lighter color, and then once it's dry, you can put a smaller dot on top of it in that same color family, right? Darker green, and then the light green dot on top, or vice versa. Let's just talk about this list. So this list, like I say, write down each of the tools that you have, and these are just some of the tools that I know that you've recently got. But if you find other things around the house that you might think, hey, this is going to make a great dotting tool, by all means. Some crochet hooks, if you have crochet hooks that have flat bottoms to them, then you'll find, and we're talking, of course, obviously, the opposite end of the hook end. In some cases, they are flat, and those would be as gradiated sizes of hooks and things. They would make great dotters. For the time being, this is lots. I mean, we've got 7 different options here, right? So go ahead and list them, and then do the dots. How we do the dots, so I will just show you on this piece before we go ahead and do on the black, the flat, so the dowel, either the dowel or the eraser end. This is how we make a dot. So you're just going to go ahead and you're going to dip it in your paint. And when it comes to the paint, FYI, you'll find that the heavier body paint, right, so the stuff that comes in the tubes is going to be more difficult to work with in this particular case because it's going to leave peaks in your dots, and you don't necessarily want peaks in your dots. You can't dot over top of those. Now, maybe that's exactly what you're after, but if not, you want the more fluid, right? The craft paint's a great consistency for it. Okay, with the things that have a flat end, you're going to want to just not on an angle, not side, forward, back. You're going to want to go straight down. And then you are going to not make sure that it does not touch, or don't press it all the way down to your paper, because I'll show you. So I'll see that's a little thick. What you want is just enough. Press it down so you sort of see the paint come up around the edges, but you don't have to come in contact with the table, so to speak. And there you have a dot. Now, if you're going to change, if you're staying with the same color, then just dip it in again. Don't try and redot, just dip it in again and make another dot, okay? Straight up and down, just put gently until you see the paint come around the edges and then lift up. Now, you are going to want to wipe that off, okay? Go ahead and wipe that paint off. Yeah, this is going to be a messy one. You're going to go ahead and then change. Let's see, maybe you want the pencil eraser, right? And so we'll dip that in. And again, straight up and down. And just so that you start to see the paint squeeze out around the outside and lift up. And there is your dot. Again, don't, and I'll show you actually what happens if you were to push it all the way down to the table. Here's what happens. So if you push it all the way down, well, I just blew that theory all to pieces, didn't I? Okay. Actually, here's what happens. Here's what normally happens. How about I say that? Here's what normally happens. If you, there we go. Yeah, there we go. You see how this dot, you've got this dip in it, and the colors change because the paint is pulled away almost from the paper, right? That's what happens when you come in contact with, like, push it right down to the surface. You just want to touch it to the paper, make sure that the paint oozes out at the sides a bit, and then lift up. Okay. Now and those are single dots, so you're gonna, each time you change color, you know, clean off your wood or your dowels or whatever you happen to be using. Now for something what we call, oh, here is the little dots. So with the pin and the cork, you just, and in this case, you can actually touch the paper, okay? It has to do, I believe, with the difference between a round surface and a flat surface. The dowels are flat, so if you come into contact, it's gonna leave that divot. Because this is round, it's going to leave that little droplet, and you have absolutely perfect little dots. Now, that's dipping and dotting, dipping and dotting. If you're going to walk your dots, so if you want that gradiated, see and hear how those little dots change, they get smaller, 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 that is called walking your dots. Well, maybe this one's a little bit better, though it's dark. Here we have, right in here, walking your dots, okay? This would have been done with the same tool. You start here, and then you dot, 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 dot. But you don't re-dip. So, put my little pin there, pin head, in the paint. And I'm going to dot, 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 and you see they just, by the sheer beauty and nature of it all, just get perfectly smaller for you. That's wonderful. Now let's just go ahead and try. So this, our paper clip, will make very tiny dots. Bloop. You may not even be able to see that on camera. Really tiny, tiny little dots, right? Tiny, tiny little dots right there. But they will still walk as well. So you either have the regular dots where you dot, or you dip and dot, dip and dot. Or you dip and you dot, dot, you walk. And it also makes those tiny. So that one's going to give you some super fine detail. That would allow for things like in this, it would allow for these little tiny dots in here, right? So that's Great. Okay, the pencil, again, we've shown you what the eraser does. As far as the sharpened end, just dip it in the paint, and again, straight up and, well, you know what, I'm gonna take that back for a second. The pencil I have found, if you do it straight up and down on the point, makes very lovely tiny dots, as you can see. These are very tiny, and if you can't see them, then that's how tiny they are. If you hold the pencil just to the side a bit at an angle, you still get dots in this case, but they are a little bit larger. Okay, but again, you can walk those dots, right? And they will get smaller. All right, so let's go ahead and try something. So that's how, like I say, that's how you're going to get to this, right? And it's important that you do that just so that you have an idea of what everything looks like. Okay, now about your 6-inch square black cardstock. You can, like I say, take a pencil and a ruler. All I do, if it's cut roughly, fairly close to being really, honest to goodness, perfectly square, and my cuts are not always perfectly square, and that's okay. I just make a few light guidelines from corner to corner, right? Corner to corner as much as you can. Mark out your 3 inches and find where that half is, 3 inch, then go ahead and draw your line 3 inches and draw the line the other way. In chalk, right? So here's, I've done the exact same thing, but in chalk. This again, of course, as we discussed last time about our chalk, it is super easy to erase. Yay! Which it's not going to be as easy with the pencil on the black, because here's what happens. First of all, there is a chance that you could end up taking up the cardstock, right? You could end up leaving a mark with your eraser. And plus, if you've got something that has got, a lot going on it, that's going to be really hard to get the eraser in there and cover it up. And as such, I mean, I can see pencil markings in here, but you've got to look really closely. So don't worry about it. Okay. So first things first, a center dot. So as with mandalas, our beautiful circle, that idea there is no beginning, there is no end, they bloom from the inside out, much like flowers, right? So think of starting possibly, I mean, you can start really large and then go small, and I mean, really, this is all about trying things and seeing how you like it, and you can even do patterns. You could do just full of circles. If you want the circle, if you need that perfect circle to happen, and you don't trust yourself with just the guidelines like this, you can absolutely take a compass, put it in the center, and create some circles for yourself so that you've got that perfect circle but it's not necessary. So I start usually with, you could start with something this size, absolutely, but I'm not going to at this point. I'm just going to start with my largest piece of dowel. And I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to start with white. And I admit that my paint has started to dry a bit, so it's a bit gloopy, and that's not good. It's going to leave peaks, and I don't want that. All right, so as close to the dead center, up and down, you're going to just put it in, come out, and there we have our first dot. And again, wipe your tool off, right? Wipe up as much as you can. Then I'm going to take a smaller dowel. And I'm not going to necessarily take the smallest because I might want to add another dot, a secondary dot on top. But I'm going to take the next size up, and I think I'm going to go, what am I going to go? I'm going to go yellow. I'm going to start with the ups and the downs, the verticals, all right? So we decide where we want that spacing to be. You can be really close. You can make the spacing a little further out, but we're going to try and line it up as close as possible. And I'm going to dip because I'm going to dot. Try and get the same spacing and make another dot, right? Then you're going to turn your paper. This is so key. Don't try and do this all from the same. You'll notice that there's no green tape this week, right? It's because you absolutely need to turn the paper. You're going to do the verticals again, so about the same distance. And then straight up and down. There we go. And you can see this one's a little further out than it needs to be. Oh well, so be it. And then you have those. You're going to go ahead and you're going to fill in the ones in between, right? And again, vertical. Just try to get the same spacing. Nice and gentle. This is again, play your music because you're going to want to take your time doing this, right? And just keep turning. You dip, you dot, you turn the paper. There we go. Okay, there's that layer. Then I'm going to take the next size up, and I am going to choose another color. And I'm going to go with green this time. So I've dipped. Now I want to start in between. So let's do, here would be the vertical this way, right? We're just going to off-center it a bit. So we're still dealing with the up and down this way, but it's in between the dots. And straight up and down. I'm going to move those out just a bit further. And dot. And then you're going to want to do the one that's straight across and try and keep the spacing and this takes practice. It really, I mean, don't expect perfection the first time around. And if you do, well done you. But please don't set the bar that high. This does take, it takes some getting used to, but it's still fun. So in between. And you just keep going around like that. Okay. Did I get them all? Yeah. All right. You can keep going out like that. You can do another, actually the pencil eraser would be the next size up. You go to the next size up, you could do the same colors, you could repeat colors, you could do another color. You know, I could start with pinks going around. And again, it's in between, right? And my spacing is off, so I'm still going to enjoy the process. I'm not going to worry too much about it. Again, straight up and down, just until you see it sort of gush out from underneath. And like I say, my paint has started to dry a bit, and that's not helping. So again, don't put any more paint in your palette than what you're going to need. Less is more. You can always add more versus having to deal with paint that is then too dry and goopy. Okay, so you can continue on that way. Now, if you wanted to add, say, let's do I love the walking. The walking is too fun. So if you wanted to add some little walking dots around these that we have here right now. Let's see what color. Let's just do them in the white. So I'm going to dip in the white, and I'm going to start in the center. And then I'm not gonna redip, I'm just gonna dot, 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 dot. See how they get smaller? Then I'm gonna dip. Now to do the other side, I'm going to redot that top dot. And the reason being is it just helps keep things consistent, okay, as far as the sizing goes. So I'm gonna redot, and then I'm gonna walk them down, around, like that. And you don't have to worry if it's not exactly the same number on each side. The eye's not necessarily going to count all of those. It's just going to see the pattern. And that is how we walk the dots. It's a lot different than walking the dog. It's probably a lot easier too. Just dot, dot, dot. And then dip. Redot that starting dot. And then around you go. Like that. Okay. Continue out, you can add in the center, you can, like I say, you know, depending on, you can, now this has got double dots in it. In fact, there's even a couple of places where it has triple dots, whoops, in it as well. But however you want to do this, you can make them look like star patterns. This is really great too if you want to do a star type pattern. And as much as Advent is coming, if you're looking to do, make your own cards this year, if you want to go out and buy cards, then doing this, doing stars on it, this is a great way to do that. So again, I would wipe off all that paint, and once you have it in a place where you are happy with, I'll show you what the double dotting. Now again, in this particular version, you can see that the dots are not done in the center, right? In some cases, the dots are done at the bottom. That is strictly up to you if you want to do it that way. It gives an interesting take on it, as opposed to doing the dots completely in the center, right? And as you can see, this is a triple dot. Now the key to doing the double dots is that this has to be absolutely dry before you go ahead and add the dot on top. Now so a hairdryer might be helpful. I don't know that this one might be dry enough, so we'll give it a shot and see. I'll take something that's smaller, and we'll do the two color, right? Because it was a suggestion that you do two green, like two of the whatever three colors you've decided, do two of each, whether it's a lighter or darker version. So here's my dot. I've got the darker green in this case, and I'm just going to go right straight in the center with a smaller tool, down, and you can see that no, that was not fully dry, because that dot didn't actually completely fill out. And that's what happens, is that when the paint is still drying from your dots, that if you try and go ahead and dot over top of it, you will oftentimes, the consistency of the dot, there's no guarantees, is really what it comes down to. Okay, now, having said all of that, and you're saying, Carolyn, there is no way that I can possibly deal with these little itty bitty tiny tools. This is not my go-to thing. My hands are never going to allow it. I have arthritis. You know, perhaps tremors are causing you to not be able to do this to your satisfaction. That's okay. Let's try something else. Go ahead and take your paper, and we are going to use these tools. Oh, these magical tools. And let me just say that I did try using the tips of my fingers and my thumbs as the dotting, and they are not consistent, and it's very hard to get consistent. So I said, no, wait, this can still be done, but we're going to revamp it a bit, right? We're taking away, so if you think about mandalas being, again, they are about patterns. They are about blooming from the outside, going in or out. So let's just go ahead and don't worry about perfect circles. If you're going to use your fingers, let's not worry about perfect circles, okay? Just get that right out of our heads. Crazy. We are just going to use, let's start with why not start with our, well, here's something that you could use for starters, is the big fat end of the cork, okay? And I think I'm gonna need a little more paint in here just to be able to get it for the cork. So I'm gonna dip the cork in the paint. Oh yeah, that's lots now. Oh, what fun. All right, and I'm gonna do as much as I can. I'm just gonna plop it down there. And in this case, I wouldn't worry so much about if it touches the paper or not, because we're not dealing with a, you know, the same sort of dotting situation as we did before. So there, you've got a center. Now, let's take our index finger for whatever hand you might want. And I am going to, what am I going to do? I'm going to do, yeah, let's do the yellow. This. I'm just going to dip my finger in there, right? And then I'm going, let's see, I'm going to make sort of peddly kind of shapes. And I wouldn't necessarily suggest that you try and, like we did with the dotting, we're reaching over. I wouldn't suggest that with your finger. I would stick to around the outside and keep rotating. So let's just make a dot. Great, and wipe your finger off. This is, you're gonna get dirty, but that's part of the fun. And then let's go with, I'm gonna go back with the green. And I'm gonna lay the finger down a bit more as opposed to using just the point of the finger. Let's see what happens if I sort of lay it down this way. Well, that's kind of cool, right? Doing those in-betweens. And having that kind of interesting edge to it like that, that's kind of fun. Now, one of the things I do find that because the dotting with the pin in the cork is something that you can actually tap then on the table when you dot, that is far easier. And it's still a lot of fun, right? So let's take some white and let's go ahead and dot from, I don't know, let's see what happens. What happens if I dot from the green to the yellow? So we're gonna go dot, 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 dot. And then I'm gonna do the same on the other side. So repeat that top dot. And then dot sort of over here to the yellow. Well, now I should have aimed for there, but that's okay. See, it's just about having fun now. Okay, I'll do it here. Dot, 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 aim for the center. Good. Now let's try and remind ourselves to do it this time. Maybe because I wasn't moving the paper in the right place. So we'll redot, and then we're gonna go down to the center. Oh yeah. And let's try this one. So we'll start at the top, dot, and then we're going down to the yellow. Well, it doesn't have quite as much curve. And then redot to the center. And then one more time. Well, no. You know what's kind of cool? Let's try taking the eraser and let's just dip it in some more yellow. And again, the pencil is easier. I just want some yellow here again. And I would go back and do those other, finish off this over here, but I'm just curious. And I'm gonna dip it in the yellow. And I'm gonna go down to the same spot though, right? So out the side, and I'm just dotting down. And then from the side into here. This one's a big jump. I might not have enough, but that's okay. Almost. I'm gonna get lots of paint on it then. Let's try it. Okay. And then if you want, let's be, it's gonna take my pinky and I'm gonna dip it in this metallic. And I am just going to see what happens if I smudge it. So this is an experimentation. I haven't tried this at all. What happens if we do this? Right? So I'm just putting it down on the paper and I'm giving it a little flick. Ooh, I like that. So I'll just add this. Ooh. And the reason that I'm using the pinky, not just because of size, but when you use a finger that's not as strong as your index finger, you won't get like an over-controlled, there's just something a little more free about it. That's kind of fun. That's very, yeah, I'm liking that. Now, once this is dry, what I would do is on the insides of these dots, maybe I go ahead and I try this technique with a darker color and just do a little, smudge. You could add more color in here if you wanted. You could use your pin, and you could, once it's dry, and you could just do dip and dot all the way around to create a little fill in, or just fill in the center with little dots. There are lots of options there. And so, yeah, I think that's fun. So there are you have your, it's possible this with your dots, but if the tools are not working for you, then go ahead and try something fun like this just with your fingers and experiment. Don't put the bar on you as far as having to say, but it has to be a masterpiece. No, you need to enjoy, and you need to be able to just allow yourself the freedom to create, right? Because that's our gift giving back. It is creating. It is using the ability to create that God has given us. And remind yourself about the fact that there is beauty, and it can be in the most surprising places, right? But it is about changing that story. So if you don't find this perhaps beautiful the first time, change the story and try it again. And if you don't have the black cardstock, like I say, whatever cardstock you may have, or just go ahead and try it on a piece of white paper. Pick dark colors then that really pop off the white. So yes, there are your options for today. All right, let's recenter ourselves. Feet flat on the floor, backs up nice and straight. And we're going to take a deep breath in. And on that deep breath in, I want you to focus on your smiles and tears. And sending that radiating love of God out to the world. And again, breathing in, focusing on your words and deeds. And out, radiate God's love out to others. And on that last deep breath in, breathing in God's love. And on the way out, radiating it back out to others. And together we say, Creator God, quiet my mind before it passes judgment on this prayer, my gift of time to you. Amen. Have a wonderful week. Play some music. Reflect on the beauty that can be found by changing your story if you're having trouble finding that beauty in all that's going on in the world. But that while you're finding that calm and you're creating, and I wish for you that you may feel some being a little restored, and that together we can find our aliveness. Have a wonderful week. Bye.